Once upon a time, in a bustling city, there was a young woman named Kichu who was studying medicine. She was deeply dedicated to her studies and her future as a doctor. One chilly night, after a long visit to her boyfriend Hugo's house, she set out to walk home. The streets were quiet and dimly lit, casting eerie shadows on the pavement. As she walked, she noticed a young pregnant woman sitting alone by the roadside, visibly distressed. Concerned, Kichu approached the woman, whose name was O. The woman's face was etched with pain and exhaustion, her eyes red from crying. Kichu gently asked, "What are you doing out here by yourself at this hour? It's nearly midnight. Where is your husband or family?" O looked up, her voice trembling as she spoke through her tears. "My father disowned me when he found out I was pregnant out of wedlock. My mother died while giving birth to me. I'm all alone, with nowhere to go." Kichu felt a surge of empathy and knew she had to help. Even though her own home was quite a distance away, she decided to take O to Hugo's house. It was a decision driven by her compassion and her medical knowledge, which told her that O needed immediate assistance. As they approached Hugo's house, Kichu felt a knot of anxiety. She wasn't sure how Hugo would react to the unexpected guest. When they arrived, Hugo opened the door, clearly surprised and unsettled to see Kichu with a distressed, pregnant stranger. He asked with concern, "Who is she, and why did you bring her here without any prior notice?" Kichu took a deep breath and explained O's situation. She pleaded with Hugo, emphasizing that O was homeless and in urgent need of help. Hugo, though sympathetic, was anxious about the situation and unsure about taking on such a responsibility without any prior discussion. As they discussed what to do, O suddenly began to scream in agony. Kichu's heart raced as she realized that O was in labor, her water had broken, and she was already experiencing contractions. Kichu's medical training kicked in, and she quickly moved to O's side. She directed her to lie down and began to prepare for the delivery. "Oh, you need to push with all your strength. This is crucial for both the baby and your own survival. Please, focus on pushing." O, weakened by days without food and overwhelmed by pain, struggled but managed to push with Kichu's guidance. After a few intense moments, the baby's cry pierced the air. Kichu carefully cut the umbilical cord, cleaned the baby, and brought the infant to O. However, as Kichu checked for a heartbeat, her heart sank. O was lifeless. In a state of panic and despair, Kichu ran to Hugo, exclaiming, "Hugo, she's dead. What should we do now?" Hugo, still grappling with the shock, suggested they dispose of O's body by the roadside. He argued that calling the police could lead to serious trouble, as they would question why O was brought to his house instead of a hospital. Kichu was deeply concerned about the baby's future, but Hugo's insistence and her trust in him led her to reluctantly agree. Hugo wrapped O's body in a white cloth, placed it in the trunk of his car, and hid the placenta in a plastic bag. What Kichu did not know was that Hugo had other plans. He called a mysterious number, and an elderly man, a witch doctor, answered. The man was intrigued by the fresh corpse and the placenta and instructed Hugo to come to his shrine immediately. Hugo and Kichu's relationship had begun when Kichu entered university. They had been friends for a year before their relationship developed. Both came from modest backgrounds, but Kichu's genuine love and commitment to Hugo were clear. She supported him through his struggles and had always been there for him. However, a month ago, Hugo encountered an old high school friend named Ad, who was now living a life of opulence and luxury. During a chance meeting at the market, Ad had shown Hugo his extravagant lifestyle, which left Hugo feeling envious and curious. Ad took Hugo to a lavish restaurant, where they discussed their past and accomplishments. Hugo, amazed by Ad's wealth, asked about the source of his riches. Ad, while cautious, warned Hugo about the perils of seeking wealth through dark means. He said, "Some stories are better left untold. Trust me, Hugo, you're better off continuing your struggle with Kichu. It's not worth it. Despite Ad's warning, Yugo's desire for wealth grew stronger. He persisted, pleading with Ad to reveal the secret to his success. Ad, reluctantly, agreed to help. The next day, under the pretense of buying goods, Yugo followed Ad to a remote village where they met with the witch doctor. The witch doctor, after hearing Yugo's desperation, explained that to gain wealth and fame, Yugo needed to provide the placenta of a newborn baby and the body of the baby's mother. Despite his fear and moral conflict, Yugo agreed to fulfill the witch doctor's demand, knowing he had only 10 months to do so or face madness. Back home, Yugo was plagued by the witch doctor's ominous instructions. His nights were restless, haunted by nightmares of a grand celebration where he saw himself lying dead in a casket, a banner reading, "The Rich Madman," above him. Disturbed and fearful, he struggled with his conscience but found himself unable to confide in Kichu. Ad eventually informed Yugo that he could no longer assist him, as the witch doctor had been arrested. Yugo was left to procure the corpse and placenta on his own. One night, Kichu visited Yugo with alarming news: she was pregnant and could not have an abortion due to her personal beliefs. Yugo was overjoyed by the news, seeing an opportunity to fulfill the witch doctor's demand. Driven by his ambition and greed, Yugo decided he would kill Kichu when her pregnancy reached term. He planned to use her placenta and body to meet the witch doctor's demands, believing this would bring him the wealth and status he craved. The darkness of his decision marked a turning point, as Yugo's once loving and supportive relationship with Kichu was now overshadowed by his dangerous quest for power and riches. When Kichu returned that night with O, who was pregnant, it presented Yugo with a significant opportunity. Yugo took O's corpse and the placenta to the witch doctor, who performed a ritual that night. The witch doctor informed Yugo that he would become rich, but he also imposed a strict condition: Yugo must not father a child. If you have a child of your own, the witch doctor warned, you will lose your life instantly. You cannot have an heir to your empire. When you die, everything will turn to ashes. Yugo, driven by greed and desperation, reluctantly accepted the witch doctor's conditions. When he returned home, he found Kichu sleeping peacefully beside the newborn baby. They looked serene, like mother and child. As he glanced at Kichu, he was reminded of her pregnancy and the dire consequences if he allowed her to give birth. His thoughts turned dark, and he decided he must act on his sinister plan. He quietly went into the kitchen and retrieved a knife, his heart heavy with the burden of his greed and selfishness. At that moment, his resolve was challenged by a loud banging on the door. Yugo quickly placed the knife on the table, hiding it from view. The noise was so loud that it woke Kichu, though the baby remained asleep. The banging continued, and together, Yugo and Kichu went to answer the door. They found a woman and 2 policemen standing outside. The woman's eyes were bloodshot, clearly from crying. "We are deeply sorry for intruding at this hour," the woman said, her voice trembling. "We are searching for a young pregnant lady named O. People in the area said she was last seen around here." Kichu's heart sank with fear, but Yugo gestured for her to stay calm. "I just returned from disposing of some trash and didn't see any pregnant woman on my way back," he said. The woman, looking disappointed, was about to leave when she turned to Kichu and asked, "My daughter, have you seen my daughter? She's about your height and age, and she's due to give birth any time now. She's my only daughter." Kichu felt a deep pang of empathy as she heard the woman's anguish. The tears in the woman's eyes touched her deeply. Despite this, Kichu hesitated, knowing that revealing the truth could have dire consequences. "I'm really sorry, Mom. I haven't seen your daughter, but I sincerely hope you find her and that she's safe." The policemen thanked them and proceeded to question others in the neighborhood, while Kichu couldn't tear her eyes away from the grieving mother. The knowledge that the woman's daughter was with her, not far away, weighed heavily on her heart. However, Yugo's threats kept her silent. Once the door closed, Yugo confronted Kichu, anger evident on his face. What was that about? Were you planning to confess in front of the police? He demanded. Kichu, remaining calm, looked at the sleeping baby and then asked, what did you do with the body? Did you get the drugs? Yugo, trying to reassure her, said, I had to go far to ensure no one saw me. I've disposed of the body and bought the necessary drugs. Kichu, trusting Yugo, believed his story. The next day, she stayed home from school to care for the baby. When she turned on the television, she was startled to see a news report about O. The report revealed that O was the only child of Mr. and Mrs. Nom, a wealthy family. Tragedy struck when Mr. Nom's container of goods fell into the sea, leading to financial ruin and Mr. Nom's urgent need for a heart transplant. Despite their efforts to find a donor, the cost was beyond their means. Mrs. Nom sought help from a wealthy man named Alhajiyu, who agreed to assist on the condition that O, just 17 years old at the time, would be betrothed to him. If Mrs. Nom could repay the loan with interest within 2 years, O could return to her family. If not, O would become one of Alhajiyu's wives. When Mrs. Nom informed O, she accepted the arrangement without protest, motivated by her love for her father. Sadly, the transplant failed, and Mr. Nom passed away, leaving Mrs. Nom with a crushing debt. She failed to repay Alhajiyu in time, and O, now 19, became his ninth wife. The other wives resented O for her youth and beauty, leading to jealousy and hostility. While Alhajiyu traveled abroad for business, leaving O at the mercy of his other wives, she suffered severe mistreatment. They deprived her of food and peace, and when O was 8 months pregnant, she fled Alhajiyu's house to protect herself and her baby. She wrote to her mother, but with no response, she survived on the streets until Kichu found her. O's lack of proper nutrition led to early labor, and she died from complications. By the time Mrs. Nom received O's message, it was too late, and she had been frantically searching for her daughter ever since. Kichu, now understanding the full story, was devastated. She cried deeply, troubled by the revelation and the peaceful demeanor of the baby, which contrasted sharply with the turmoil surrounding O's death. Meanwhile, Yugo and Ad returned to the witch doctor's house. The witch doctor praised Yugo for fulfilling his part of the deal and reiterated the conditions: you must not have a child. If any woman bears a child for you, the life of that child will replace yours. Yugo nodded in agreement, though he was foolish to believe that the devil offers a fair deal. The witch doctor added another condition: every decade, you must bring someone into this circle. Convince someone to do as you have done, or you will go mad instantly. Yugo realized that Ad's single status and the wealth he flaunted were part of a premeditated plan. Ad had already fulfilled his decade's requirements and was now seeking a new participant. The witch doctor handed Yugo a pot and instructed him to keep it hidden in his wardrobe. This pot must remain unseen by anyone except you. It will fill with wealth each week, but you must not freely give it away. As Yugo contemplated the terms, he began to understand the dark and inescapable nature of the pact he had made.